about the routine. We did not. It was the other IV. What other IV was there?
IV routine. Yeah,
IV Pitocin. Okay, well, right. That's not the. This is the routine IV when they actually. So maybe I didn't cover that correctly, because that was Pitocin. So I was talking about the routine IV when
I think
when
you first talked about this one.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That was good. Oh my goodness, it's that time already.
No.
Okay, let me just quickly cover, reasons for cesarean. That was a good question, Judy. Because there are times, it's good to be informed about these things. I think there's notes for that, right?
Yeah.
Is there? Okay. One of the reasons would be complete placenta previa at term, which means placenta previa is if the placenta is actually attached really low, like at the cervix. And when you start dilating, like because the placenta is so low, it can cause bleeding, and you could hemorrhage, and it even could be covering the cervix where the baby can't come out anyway. So that would be a reason for a C-section, because the risk are you could hemorrhage and die, and the baby might not even be able to be born naturally anyway. Another one is transverse lie at complete dilation, which we talked about the other week with the baby. If the baby is laying transverse, it's not even breech, but transverse, totally like head here, feet here, because there's no way it's going to, if it doesn't turn and move down, it's not going to be born like that. Prolapse umbilical cord, if the cord starts coming before the baby. If the doctor says, oh my word, the cord is coming first, because what can happen, if the cord is coming out first, the baby could press against the cord and cut off all the oxygen or whatever from the baby, and the baby could die. And the reasons for prolapsed cord could be artificial ruptured membranes, like they break your water, if you have an excess amount of amniotic fluid, and there was a few other things I had written down of why, what could cause. Yeah, the most common is a premature rupture of the membranes, is where they, like say you get to the hospital and they want to speed things up, and then they rupture your membranes. That is a common reason for prolapse, prolapse cord, is that. And it could also be a breech delivery, or the umbilical cord that is really larger than usual. So if the doctor is saying, ooh, the cord's coming first, that would, and they're talking C-section, that would be one time that he would say, okay, this is, because it's life and death. It really can't be. Does that happen often? It doesn't. It's rare. I mean, it's not real rare, it's not real uncommon, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that often. Abrupted placenta, if the placenta is tearing away from the uterine wall before the baby is out, because if the placenta tears away from the uterine wall, like life is limbo, because there's no flow back and forth.
How would they know that happened?
High blood pressure is usually one of the symptoms, because you can have preeclampsia, which is preeclampsia is when you start, like you go for, like they test your blood pressure and it's going really high. That is one of the symptoms of preeclampsia, of the placenta tearing away from the uterine wall. So there are always symptoms. So it's not something you have to get a fear of because there are symptoms that they know. Okay, this is what's happening. So whenever you're like if your blood pressure goes high and they test you and it shows preeclampsia, most times they will bring you in for induction, and that is one time that I say, yes, go be induced, because it's time that the baby comes out. And then if induction doesn't, like if you doesn't go on, or doesn't, if it goes on too long, they might start talking C-section. And again, you weigh out the consequences. Is it worth it? Like, what are the pros and cons? ask the doctors what are the pros and cons. Tell me, what are we really looking at, and make informed choices from there. For me, it's really sad when there's life and death, happening, and you still stick to what you really want, and you're not considering this could mean losing the baby. So that's what it takes into consideration. Eclampsia, another one is eclampsia after failed induction. Again, the same, the preeclampsia. Abrupted placenta, sorry, that is probably actually, I didn't look into that really much further, but that is probably when it is not just pulling away, but it is, let me kind of make any. Let me get back to you about that. I was going to look into that further, then I forgot, because here we're talking about eclampsia and preeclampsia. So anyway, I'll get back to you about that. Uterine tumor blocking cervix. Again, a tumor blocking the cervix, the baby's not going to be able to move down and out, so that would cause for a C-section. True fetal distress confirmed by fetal scalp sampling or biophysical profile. When the baby's heart rate is really, really dropping, and they had it confirmed by doing like a fetal scalp sampling where they actually put some, like a fetal monitor, an internal fetal monitor on the baby's head, and they see that the baby is, the heart rate is dropping, her breathing is getting shallow. Be another reason for an emergency. Initial outbreak of herpes at onset of labor would be another one, and that is, again, that would be the that would be like again another disease that would like crop up at labor, which is not. I mean, the likelihood of that is very. It's not very likely if you're not like sexually active outside of marriage and stuff. Uterine rupture, where the uterus ruptures. So those are all things that okay, we're looking at a very serious situation here. So but not like those times that. They'll say, okay, we're going to do a C-section after you've been pushing maybe three hours or something, and nothing else is really going on. That is not really, okay, can't you just give us another, let us just buy some more time, let us just keep working here a little bit, times like that, that any of these, we're looking at a serious situation. Okay, and then when you're looking at the risk for C-section, the baby has a breathing issues. Okay, when a baby is born C-section, via C-section versus a natural birth, they actually have wet lungs because coming through the birth canal causes the lungs to instead of being okay, let's just read it here. When babies initiate labor, its body shifts from absorbing fluid to excreting fluids. So instead of taking in fluids, they start, as they're coming through the birth canal, they're excreting fluids. So C-section babies usually have wet lungs, and then increased NICU rate. Even if the C-section is necessary, allow labor to determine when. Like even instead of scheduling a C-section, at least give your baby the option of going into, like your baby in your body, the option of going into labor. Because even a little bit of labor is better than none, like that, because all that is good for the baby. And so it's still better for your body to allow itself to go into labor first. The risk for a mother from having a C-section is infection, bleeding, which leads to emergency hysterectomy, more placental issues later, miscarriage and fertility, and just difficulties in pregnancies, scar tissue. more difficult to get baby out with future C-sections, because once you start having C-sections, yeah, I mean, it is now, VBACs are becoming a common thing. It's not, but it's still a lesser chance of having, I mean, there's still, you know, the statistics that still are showing, if you start having C-sections, you're more likely to have more than one. Bonding issues, breastfeeding issues, longer recovery time, factors that lead to avoidable C-sections, things to do to avoid C-sections would be labor induction. Refuse labor induction, because when you start opening the door to any of the interventions, you know, it's easier to keep opening those doors. Confinement to beds, be able, you know, to be up and around is a good way to avoid a C-section. Not to just be in bed. Restricted movement during labor, keep walking around, doing those things. Fear, again, is a thing. That's why we talk about fear, because a lot of times people go into pregnancies with fear. It's amazing what fear does, and I've seen it firsthand, fear, like and how that really does. You know, when there's fear, there's not faith, right? And so when there's fear going on, it just is amazing how that can even affect, like spiritually, the baby from actually coming. Like sometimes there's labors that just don't move on, and they just kind of get stuck. We start talking through things. Okay, what is going on? What are you thinking about? Is there any fear that you're facing? And a lot of times there is, and fear is holding the baby back. And so to avoid C-section, we will talk through things and say, okay, let's talk about the fear that you're having, and let's get rid of that. And then the baby can. There's actually a really neat testimony, very interesting testimony that my coach shared with me one time of a girl that had been in sex slavery, I think. I mean, I think it was something like that anyway. And then she got saved, and then she got rescued and saved and stuff. And her first baby was born via C-section. And then the second time that she was pregnant, my coach was her doula, and she got stuck, like in labor. She finally got stuck and just didn't move on. And so, while she was in sex slavery and stuff, she had been pregnant many, many times, and they always had her abort her babies. And every time she got pregnant, they had her aborted, you know, and she'd get pregnant again, another abortion, and this just went on until then she got saved and got out of it. And then the second time that she was pregnant, my coach was her doula, and she got stuck. And so they had her walking through, talking to the baby and saying, you know, this is a safe place. Mommy loves you, Daddy loves you, and just talking to the baby, telling the baby that it is safe. Because by this time, her body is saying, this is not a safe place for a baby to come into. Just the fear, like fear was holding it, just making it up, you know, holding that. Anyway, they had her walking through that. And as soon as she started talking like that and just walking with the baby and telling the baby it's safe and all that, the baby was born. She went through, and she went on to have more babies and stuff. But those things are so real. They really are so real. And so that's why we do talk about these things and say, you know, there is a thing that fear that will hold labor back at times. So we want to work through these things and to avoid C-sections or even, you know, that coming up during that time. Another one is, artificial ruptured membranes, having them like break your water too early and stuff, or even at all. It's best to just let it go. And sometimes like breaking the water can causes a faster labor, but only by 1 or 2 hours. So you weigh your risk. Like, can I go through this and having easier contractions and just going a little longer rather than having them break my water and then having harder contractions and but having it go maybe an hour faster. You know, you weigh those things out. Avoiding epidurals or other pain meds, the dietary factors, smoking and other drug use. Yeah, those are, that covers the C-sections. Are there any questions about that? You understood what that was covering a step? Are your papers also out there? Are we missing stuff?
No.
Okay. Okay, it was 9 o'clock and you all had a busy day yesterday, so it was wind down. I think that we covered most everything. We just didn't do any of the relaxation techniques and stuff, but we'll get to that yet. So for the next time, or your homework, that's on there too.
Well, wait, I guess we wouldn't be here for that.
Oh, that's right. Unless I end up like totally not, like for the next 2 weeks, not doing any classes, would you be okay with that? Like, and then still like picking up like the week after the 10th. Like if John and Ashley can't come back, I can't do a class if there's nobody here.
Right.
You know.
So then that would be 2 more weeks.
And that would be 2 weeks, 2 more then after, right, after the 10th, like the 17th and the 24th, probably. That's probably what I'll do. I mean, I'll talk with Ashley again and see how that works into their schedule. But that would take you up to that having your baby, though. Your due date is like the middle, 18th. Ashley's is the beginning. Yeah, but yeah,
Good, though. That way it's fresh in our mind.
Right, exactly. I know. It is good that way. Absolutely. Okay, so for your homework, then, oh yeah, do your paper sometimes. And then read article about due dates and newborn procedures. I have, oh yeah, your handout. Did I give you this paper the first time? I wasn't sure if I did. It talks about things to like research on baby care. I don't think I did, right? Okay. Those are things to just like to research on. Those things that you're going to be, you know.
And this is all like right when the baby's born, right?
Yeah. What talks about the artificial rupture of membranes and stuff too.
Oh.
And kind of to help you with your birth plan, and to help, again, covering your birth plan stuff. Things to just research on, especially, yeah, and then those like the tests, like starting with the delayed cord cutting and the vitamin K shot, the hepatitis B shot, the eye cream, all those things that are for the baby. So just do some research on that, and I have some links, websites down below that you can do some research on that, and then come with questions, because the next time we're going to be talking, that would be in 3 weeks then, talking about the baby, talking about caring for the baby.
For the birth plan, how do we get that together? Do we actually like write it out, type it out? Is there something you can print out and fill out, or how do you do that?
So I had given you kind of an outline of what somebody's looks like. Just kind of go by that. Like,
but do you actually handwrite it out, or
you can, or you can handwrite it and then have somebody type it or whatever. There's no set way. It's just
pretty much just have on a piece of paper what you want from.
Yes. Yeah. There's no
right or wrong.
Right, exactly. In a certain way.
Well, because Sandra was saying she even forgot hers.
Okay.
So she just kind of, I guess she said that they just told them what they wanted, I guess.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's just like if you're a very detailed person and you really, some of these things are really important to you. I mean, birth plans are just a good idea, because that way you inform yourself too of what you want in front of your eyes and what you want, and letting everybody else know, okay, this is where I'm at. So it is a good idea. I mean, you don't get it done, a lot of people don't.
I just wasn't sure if there was a certain way
that
you should go about it or not. Okay.
No, there's not. Just write it down. And that outline that I gave you was just an idea of what somebody else's looks like. That was, yeah. Okay, and for the next time, or the two of you together discuss desires for birth plan, begin to record ideas and discuss with your care provider, which would be your midwife. Practice relaxation 3 times this week. How's relaxation going? No time for it yet?
One time we haven't had that.
Right, I know, it's busy. Yeah. And write a love letter to each other to give to each other after the baby comes. That's an assignment that I'm just going to give to you. Just write one to each other to give, you know, just write it out, like, make it all fun. The daddy of my daughter, to the mommy, you know. And take a picture of the two of you before the baby arrives, which you guys already did. You had your photo shoot and stuff, right? So that's already, yeah, just kind of some fun things to get your little family all prepared for the coming of the baby. And
So crazy this is great.
I know, it is coming.
Stop it, it's coming.
It is coming, I know, and it's so exciting.